how the body decomposites, and the time that it spends going through those changes, and more on today's video, so sit back and enjoy. Scientists discovered exactly what happens to the human body after death. Rest in peace is a wish that many of us have made when a loved one has passed away. However, an Australian researcher has found that after someone dies, their body doesn't necessarily experience total calmness or serenity. In an effort to enlighten us all, then, they've shared what really happens to us after death, and it's surprising to say the least. Alison Wilson made her discovery while working at the Australian Facility for Taphonomic Experimental Research, also known as AFTER. This organization, which is part of the University of Technology Sydney, UTS, has its own human body farm facility, where researchers study human remains in various outdoor conditions. And such scientific research helps bolster criminal investigations, especially those that concern deceased victims. So, for 17 months, Wilson used time-lapse cameras to record a body as it decomposed on AFTER's grounds, with the resulting footage revealing the truth about how remains break down over time. And, strikingly, the process is not as straightforward as it once seemed. In fact, the truth could very well change the ways in which experts investigate deaths from here on out. For many years, then, the United States had the world's only facilities for studying human decomposition. And, of course, these institutions provided plenty of valuable research into the way in which bodies break down after death. But researchers also recognized that Australia's unique climate could yield interesting results in this specialist area. They hoped, too, that any findings could aid Australia's police force. As you may have guessed, ecological and geological conditions in Australia differ from those in the States. In order to study decomposition as it happens in their environment, then, scientists in this corner of the world knew that they had to open their own research facility. So, that's precisely what AFTER came to be. You see, the donated space allows researchers to learn more about forensic taphonomy, the study of post-mortem decomposition and remains. Experts have been working on the grounds since 2016, which is when AFTER opened its doors. And the facility brings together not only forensics experts, but also academics and police officers, as members of all of these groups are involved in death investigations. So far, experts have focused on fine-tuning their ways of estimating a person's time of death from the bones that are left behind. To do so, they have studied a slew of different factors, including bacterial activity, weight loss and surface changes. And taking these separate criteria into account helps to give a more accurate picture of what happened to a victim. According to AFTER's website, the likely outcomes of the research are an improved understanding of time-dependent factors involved in the deterioration of human skeletal remains and teeth. This information would also take into consideration the ways in which different types of tissue break down in Australian-specific conditions. All of this combined would make a huge contribution to the international taphonomic community. Yet this hasn't been the only experiment undertaken at the Australian facility since its grounds opened. And another AFTER study may just have an impact on the investigation of large-scale war crimes. Specifically, an AFTER team headed by Dr. Soren Blau and John Stierenberg are going to look into the effects of decomposition in mass graves. The research will focus on the environmental changes that are brought about as a result of the decaying process, and whether these can help experts find graves of any size. To check that the decomposition equation worked on both sides of the world, then, Wilson used the time-lapse cameras to capture the process as it happened. What's more, her work marked the first time that such technology has ever recorded decomposition. And after the videos had been logged, the researcher was finally able to confirm that the original formula worked on her side of the globe. Yet Wilson's footage did more than just confirm the merits of the equation calculated in the Northern Hemisphere. You see, the medical science undergraduate noticed something surprising in the time-lapse recordings of the decomposing body. As the human remains broke down, they moved, and they weren't just slight changes of position either. Wilson described the footage by saying, "What we found was that the arms were significantly moving, so that arms that started off down beside the body ended up out to the side of the body. One arm went out, and then came back into nearly touching the side of the body again." What made the footage even more shocking, though, was the time span over which the corpse continued to move. Wilson said that she knew the body would shift as decomposition began. However, it continued to change its position over the 17 months research, a much longer period than had been expected. But Wilson has her theories as to why the cadaver moved so drastically over this nearly 1.5-year span. In particular, she believes that the body contracted as the ligaments dried out over time. And knowing that corpses behave this way post-mortem could be a huge insight for police investigators, the specialist continued. As Wilson told ABC News, this research is very important to help law enforcement to solve crime, and it also assists in disaster investigations. It's important for victims and victims' families, and in a lot of cases it gives the victim a voice to tell their last story. Others in the field couldn't help but agree, and elaborate further too. Until recently, detectives may have blamed a body's changed position on another person or perhaps even an animal. They now have to contend with Wilson's findings, however, and the idea that bodies may just move on their own. And such a possibility was news to everyone in the field, as Mallet explained. That's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.